Hey viewers, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are diving deep into a critical conversation, one that is uncomfortable for some but necessary for all. We are unpacking the real experiences of Black and Latino communities in America, the shared struggles, the painful histories, and often overlooked intersection between race, immigration, and systemic oppression. From the targeting of Latinx communities today to the historical scapegoating of Asian Americans to the ongoing impact of white patronage, these are not isolated events. They are part of a long, connected story that many refuse to see. We will also explore the complex relationship between Black Americans and Latinos, the role of anti-Blackness within immigrant communities, and why understanding our shared history is crucial for building solidarity. This isn't about pointing fingers, it's about speaking the truth, honoring the fight for civil rights, and calling out the systems that we still seek to divide us. Get ready for an honest, unfiltered conversation. Let's get into it.
You can tell certain people are disconnected to the struggles that we go through, because I posted videos and I'm like, as a Black man, I understand what the Hispanic or Latino community is going through. And then of course, certain people are going to be like, oh, what does race have to do with it? What does you have being a Black man? Well, it's easy for you to say if you're not part of a marginalized group. If you're part of a group that has not been subjected to oppression, it's easy for you to completely detach a race and skin color, what else? Even religion. It's easy for you to detach those things from the struggles that we're going through. But like I said, like as a Black man, and I can even take it a step further and say as a Black Muslim, because I mean, this whole rhetoric that undocumented immigrants or gang members and criminals coming over, like all that, I don't believe it. I don't buy into it at all. I think it's false, because I watched what they did after 9/11. And by they, I mean the government and certain satellite agencies, and then even the people in the U.S. I watched what they did and how they talked about Muslims. They tried to paint the picture that Islam was spreading terror and that Islam was this religion that hated American value. All this, it just spreaded a bunch of hate, honestly, a bunch of hate and bigotry. And applying that to what I'm seeing now, as it almost parallels, because they're calling undocumented immigrants. I mean, they're saying they're criminals. And it's not true, man. Undocumented immigrants are productive people of society. This guy in the administration, he was talking about sending homegrowns to El Salvador, but he didn't once mention the El Paso shooter. He didn't mention that. That was one of, if not the worst attacks on the Latino community. It happened in Texas. And the guy, it's not like, oh, we don't know if race. The guy said, I'm doing this because basically he did it to be racist. He said he was doing it to be racist. Why don't we send him to El Salvador? That we can start with that guy.
A few days ago, I started making a video about white patriarchy in this country, specifically pertaining to what's happening to the Latinx community in this country. I deleted the video because sometimes I feel like I'm talking to a brick wall. So in the video, I talked about xenophobia and how there was a time in this country where Asian Americans were treated equally as bad, maybe worse, as the Latinx community is currently being treated in this country. In 2025, we are at a point in this country where it is almost equally as illegal to be Latinx as it is to be Black. People of Latinx descent, even if they are American citizens, are being targeted in this country by ICE, by the police. Black people know this. We're familiar with this struggle all too well. Talked about xenophobia a great deal. I even had some screenshots of xenophobia across the history of this country and how Asian Americans were. There was a time, especially during the Vietnam War, where it was nearly illegal to be Asian American. And their businesses were targeted, and they were targeted for hate crimes, and just everything that's happening right now with Latinx Americans. Kind of imagine that, but worse. Reason why I focus so greatly on xenophobia is because, again, throughout the history of this country, Asian Americans have been the target of white patriarchy hate several times. And in response to that, several times Asian Americans have sided with white patriarchy, like how we watched them side with white patriarchy and dismantling affirmative action, especially in colleges. And then recently we have that big lawsuit with that Asian American young man and his family who is suing, I believe, Harvard, because they believe that as an Asian American, He was denied entry into that university based on his nationality, based on his being of Asian descent. But Asian Americans helped dismantle affirmative action in those universities. Leading up to the election last year, we watched several different Latinx groups campaign and show their support for Donald Trump. And now he is mass deporting and allowing ICE and other law enforcement agencies to deport them, even deporting and targeting American citizens who are of Latinx descent. And as the only group of people on this land who did not come here voluntarily, Black people warned you all that this would happen, and you did not listen to us.
Let's talk about Black and Latino relationships. Heavy, right? I'm Colombian American. I was born in South America. I was raised in a working class town in New Jersey. Growing up, all of my friends were Black. I actually didn't really have that many Latino friends when I was a kid. Most of my friends were Black. And really, I think that shaped my perspective differently than a lot of Latinos in the US. And I want to make something very clear, and I want to talk about something that I think a lot of Latinos like to ignore. First off, a lot of us have Black roots. In Colombia, in South America, about 20% of the population is Black, Afro-Colombian. My father's family has Black family. I have some Black heritage. Clearly, I would never go around saying I'm like African American, but I just want to say many of us share Black ancestry, and we grew up in households that bear the stain of colonialism. Essentially, we were forced upon us these views by the Spanish, by the Portuguese, even by the US, because the US government kind of went into a lot of our homelands and kind of pushed their own agenda. And we were pushed to understand or to think or to believe that the darker we were, the more inferior we are. You see this a lot in South Asian communities. Indian communities, I see do this a lot. And I'll be very honest with you, I don't want to kind of start a controversy here, but I do often see a little bit of racism from South Asian communities directed at people like us, Latinos, and definitely at African Americans. East Asian communities, this is a problem there too. Maybe we'll talk about this in the future. Like I said, this channel is for uncomfortable conversations, and I want you guys to have them in the comments. I want you to discuss this stuff. So let's talk a little bit about Black Americans and Latinos, right? So this is the part that infuriates me the most. Black Americans have historically pushed a lot of the civil rights and liberties that we have in this country, in the United States. The civil rights movement was led predominantly by Black people. Many of the rights and the privileges that we have, if you're a Russian American and you're going around talking about how much you love Putin or whatever, you won that right. Well, you didn't win it, but you have that right because people decades ago fought for the right for you to express yourself, for you to be free and have freedom of speech. And I think this is something that a lot of Latinos don't understand. I think this is also a divide between Latinos who haven't really been in the U.S. that long and Latinos like myself who were either born or raised in the U.S. since children. I have noticed a culture amongst some Colombian Americans that I interact with who have only been living in the U.S. like 5-10 years, and all of a sudden they become political experts on the U.S. They're like in their 30s or their 20s. They didn't grow up here. They weren't teenagers here. They may not have even gone to school here. And yes, I want to shout out Aaliyah, my first crush as a child. And so sometimes you have discussions with them and you'll ask them like, oh, you think this is okay? Like what the government is doing, limiting the free speech of students, etc. And they'll be like, yeah, every country has the right to like determine who they let into their country and what they can do. Well, yeah, I mean, if you're a threat to the country, you should not be let in. But freedom of speech, that's like a foundational bedrock of our liberal democracy, which is what we have always been for, at least for the past decades after World War II. And I feel like a lot of these recent immigrants don't know that. I think they come from their countries with kind of backwards views on liberties, on what you can say, what you should say. Some of them think that because in their home countries, the government can kind of come and tell you what to say, then that's okay to do that here in the U.S. And I want to be very clear about something. America has never been okay with telling people what to do and what to say. You can take this back a couple of decades. You can take it back to Ulysses, a novel published by James Joyce, which was like very controversial and made its way through the courts. And guess what's one of the most important novels of the 20th century, which would be Ulysses by James Joyce. You also take this back to novels like Tropic of Cancer, which was heavily censored and banned in many places in the U.S. And eventually it became part of kind of our cultural experience. Henry Miller's Tropic of Cancer. One of my favorite books, by the way. I heavily recommend it. But we have historically moved towards supporting civil rights, supporting speaking for yourself, and Black Americans have been a huge part of this. I'm willing to say that if it weren't for Black Americans, America would be a little bit more totalitarian than it was a couple of months ago. And interestingly enough, when you talk about this and you tell people, well, America hasn't always been a free country, right? In the civil rights movement, dogs were sick on Black protesters. People were murdered under kind of state-sanctioned, dangerous views. And a lot of this happened because Black Americans were fighting for their rights, and they were treated horrendously by not just the U.S. government, but local governments, people in the communities that just were so ignorant and stupid that they didn't understand that, we're all human beings. And a lot of Latinos have benefited from this. Even Latinos that arrived here 5-10 years ago. But the problem is they don't know they've benefited from this. They don't know that the reason they can play salsa out in the street without having someone call.
So when people outside of marginalized groups question why race, religion, and youth experiences are even mentioned when discussing oppression, it shows just how connected they are from our reality. If you have ever been subjected to systemic oppression, it's easy to detach identity from struggle. It's easy to say, why bring race into this? Because for you, race never been weaponized against you. But for Black people, for Latinx communities, for Muslims and countless others, our very existence has been politicized, criminalized, and dehumanized for generations. As a Black man, and even more specifically as a Black Muslim, I see true patterns. I see how historic is weaponized to justify hate. After 9/11, Muslims across this country were vilified, portrayed as threats, stripped out of their humanity in the public consciousness. It wasn't about the action of a few extremists. It was a calculated campaign to paint an entire group as dangerous. And now, decades later, I watch the same formula being used against undocumented immigrants. They are labeled as criminals, gang members, invaders, but I don't buy it. I refuse to buy it. I have seen this playbook before. It's designed to divide us, to create an enemy so the real structures of power and inequality stay unchallenged. Let's be very clear. Undocumented immigrants are not criminals simply because they cross a border seeking safety or opportunity. They are mothers, fathers, students, workers, people contributing to society in countless ways. Yet they are hunted, detained, and dehumanized while actual white domestic terrorists like the El Paso shooter who explicitly targeted Latinos are somehow still framed as troubled individuals rather than the racist threats they are. And the selective outrage is obvious. When is a white supremacist committing mass murder, there is no call to send them back to Europe. There is no mass deportation. There is no labeling of an entire group. And it exposes exactly how deep white patronage double down standard runs. Now, when I speak out about this, when I draw parallels between the treatment of Black Muslim post 9/11 and the treatment of undocumented Latinx immigrants today, there is always a backlash, always someone saying you are making it about race. Yes, I am, because it is about race. It always has been. In this country, it's always been real until we dismantle the structure that keep making it so. And let's not pretend the history here is clear. Xenophobia is deeply woven into the fabric of the United States. Asian Americans have felt it. Latinx Americans feel it now. Black Americans have lived it since before this country even existed. And yet, despite sharing these histories of marginalization, we have to be honest about another uncomfortable truth. Not every marginalized community stands in solidarity with each other. Asian Americans historically have something aligned themselves with white supremacists when it seems to offer social advantage. During the fight over affirmative action, we watch Asian American groups side with the dismantling of policy designed to correct racial inequalities. And now, Latin Americans, some of whom voted for presidents who openly insulted their community, called their home countries whole countries and ramped up ICE raids are facing the brutal consequences of that choice. This is not an attack on Asian Americans or Latin Americans as a whole. It's a call to look at how white patronage manipulates marginalized groups into competing with one another instead of uniting against the true source of their oppression. Black Americans has always known what happens when you side with the system, thinking you will be exempt. Spoiler alert, you won't be. We warned you. We told you that aligning yourself with white nationalism would not protect you. Black people, the only group in this country forcibly brought here in chain, have long understood that proximity to whiteness does not equal protection, and it's painful to watch other communities realize this too late, after the damage is already done. Now, let's talk about Black and Latino relationships, because there is a lot of healing needed there too. There are millions of Latinos who share Black ancestry, Afro-Latinos whose stories are often erased or marginalized within their own communities, and colonialism is still poisoning us today. The racism many Latinos grew up with, the internalized anti-Blackness, didn't just appear out of nowhere. It was seeded by Spanish colonizer, Portuguese colonizer, and later reinforced by American imperialism. We were taught to believe that lighter scales meant superiority, that the closer we could get to whiteness, the better. And those colonial mindsets didn't just disappear with independence movements. They are alive and well on family dinner tables, in beauty standards, in who gets jobs and who gets profiled by the police. And I say this as someone who understands both sides. Many Latinos, especially immigrants who haven't lived in the US for long, doesn't grasp the historical context of Black struggles here. Some of them arrive with the same colonial biases they were taught back home. Meanwhile, Latinos who grew up here, who went to American schools, who saw firsthand how anti-Blackness operates, have a different lens. We know who fought for civil rights. We know that without Black Americans fighting for basic human dignity, none of us would have the right we enjoy today. So when newly arrived immigrants support political movements that harm Black and brown communities alike, is frustrating, it's heartbreaking, because the freedoms they exercise, the right to protest, the right to a fair trial, the right to live without constant surveillances, were fought for by Black Americans, not gifted freely by the government. And we have to talk about the divides within the Latin community itself. The Latinos' experience is not monolithic. A Cuban American in Miami may have completely different political views than a Mexican American in California or a Colombian American in New York. Immigration status, skin tone, economic status, all of these things impart how Latinos experience America and how they view solidarity with Black communities. But no matter where you fall, the truth remains, aligning yourself with white supremacy is a losing game. You might win temporal access to resources or privilege, but it comes at a cost of own humanity. And sooner or later, white supremacy comes for everyone who isn't white enough. We need to break the circle. We need to name the anti-Blackness in Latino communities, in Asian communities, and everywhere else it hides. We need to recognize the ways white patronage manipulates us into fighting each other instead of dismantling the system that harm us all. Solidarity isn't just a buzzword. It's a commitment. It's an uncomfortable work. It means listening when Black voices warn you. It means challenging your family at dinner table when they are saying racist things. It means refusing to throw another community under the bus to climb a little higher on the ladder white supremacy built for itself. The Black struggle, the Latin struggle, the immigrant struggle, they are not separate fights. They are different fronts of the same war against dehumanization. And if we ever hope to win, we better realize that now. If you found this value in this conversation, make sure to hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already, and drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear from you. Let's keep having these necessary conversations. Until next time, stay safe, stay critical, and stay connected. Peace.